Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna talk about two amongst the thousands of cases from the really dark time in human history, the witch hunt. The classic period of the witch hunt in early modern Europe and colonial America took place in or about 1450 to 1750. During this madness, estimated 35 to 100,000 people were executed, most of them women. The last executions in Europe took place in the 18th century. Interesting fact is that official legislation against witchcraft is still found in Saudi Arabia and Cameroon today, and that's not very comforting to know. Anyways, before we start, I would like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment and share. Also feel free to send in your stories, legends you like, creepypasta you wrote, anything that fits this channel content. One more thing, if you like watching real ghosts caught on video, be sure to go and check the 3X channel. Guys making some really scary stuff. Link is in the description box. Okay, put your brooms at rest and enjoy today's stories. Anne Palace was an alleged Danish witch. She was the last woman to be legally executed for sorcery in Denmark. Anne Palace was put on trial in 1692, accused of having enchanted a bailiff, Morten Faxe, by use of magic. The bailiff had taken over a property previously owned by Palace and her husband Peder. Before she had left the farm, she was to have peed bad luck into it. This had caused the Faxes to feel uncomfortable in the house. Karen claimed to have seen her do this. The property had been a very good one. Anne had inherited it from her first husband Niels, and it was thought that her second husband had married her because of the property. After they lose it, the marriage had become unhappy. She was also accused of having murdered a woman by use of magic after her husband had fallen in love with her. In 1691, her husband has danced and flirted with Maren Jakobstaller, and Anne has promised Maren an accident so that she would no longer be able to dance with other people's spouses and be admired such. Shortly thereafter, Maren had become sick and eventually she had died. Thirdly, she was accused of having spoiled the harvest for a man, Hans Savker, who was guilty of having forced her son to join the army. Anne Palace was imprisoned on 31st August 1692. A group of priests began to interrogate her even before the trial has officially begun. When trial opened 27th September 1692, she confessed the following. Yes, she was a witch. She had met Satan in the shape of the black cat by the name Puss, and she had given her body and soul to him. On 2nd November 1692, the court, led by Judge Morten Faxe, judged her guilty and sentenced her to death. When the matter was to be confirmed by the higher court, Palace withdrew the confessions. She said she had only confessed because the priest has tortured her in prison. She had been afraid to withdraw her confession before because the priest had threatened if she'd do that, she would have her tongue ripped out and be buried alive. A majority of the High Court in Copenhagen, however, voted for her execution. Normally, the method of execution for people sentenced of sorcery in Denmark was to be burned alive, but Palace was spared from the normal punishment by a special permission from the king, who ordered that she was to be decapitated before she was burned. This case is coming from my country, Croatia, and the city I live in, Zagreb. Marija Jurić Zagorka is one of the best-loved Croatian authors, as well as one of the first Croatian female journalists. Her tales of Old Zagreb are based on the historical fact embellished into rich and intriguing tales. Her most popular work is cycle of 7 novels named The Witch from Greece. The character was based on a real woman baker in Zagreb, the widow of Barica Cindrek. All you had to do to start a trial was accuse someone, in most cases a woman, and the court would issue the indictments against you, listing a very creative array of supposed crimes you have committed, and then you'd be put in a cell and tortured. And more you denied it, the more guilty they thought you were. The crimes included the usual stuff: flying on the broom, turning into animal or people, sleeping with the devil and animals, killing people by looking at them, turning into the wind, making ointments from murdered children, etc. The trials then gave witches a chance to prove their innocence. You simply had to be lighter than a feather, had a certain blood color when they hit you on the nose on purpose to judge if your bleed a normal color or a witch shade, or not float on the surface of the water and endure some of the nastiest types of torture, and there you'd have it, you'd be free. Of course, there were only 5 or 6 cases when someone was cleared of charges. Oh, and there was the mole ward test. If you had one, it meant you had a deal with the devil, and the investigators would cut it off and show it to the court as irrefutable proof. But if you didn't have one, it still meant you were guilty because you had obviously formed an alliance with the devil, and he removed all of them. The poor women were treated even worse if they happened to be beautiful. Prestige and other high-ranking members of the city government would rape women in the cells, and then obviously this meant that the devil came to their cells disguised as the priest, which just served as further proof that the woman was, in fact, a witch. Barica belonged to that group. She was a widow who committed the most terrible crime at the time. She was beautiful, smart, and independent. The worst qualities you could have as a woman in 18th century. She was very successful baker who was more interested in her business than in the many suitors that she had, which of course hurt their ego. Who did this punny baker think she was to turn down powerful and wealthy suitors? One of the suitors whose pride got hurt was public notary Lac Saleh, who accused her of witchcraft and found her alleged witch friends, who confirmed the theory, claiming that they had seen the mark of the devil on her body. As this was 1743, people in Zagreb were starting to realize that witch trials were wrong, so there was a campaign to free Barica. Her family managed to bribe Saleh at his own request, so the charges against her were withdrawn and she was released on parole. However, Saleh got only half the amount of the money that he wanted, so he asked for his other half, threatening to accuse Barica again unless he got what he wanted. He then personally led an investigative team to search for the devil's mark at Barica's house, searching for it all over her naked body, of course, after which she was forced to give him the other half of the sum he had wanted. Barica accepted because she thought she had nothing to fear as she was innocent. Saleh, on the other hand, got exactly what he wanted: the money and the chance to grope her. 2 months later, Barica dared to accuse Saleh of not only asking for a bribe, but also for loudness and inappropriate behavior, because no one other than the executioner had the right to search for the mark. The bold woman described what they did to her in detail in her accusation, but what happened after the counter-trial no one knows for sure. One source said that she was burnt at stake afterwards on September 4th, 1743, which is probably true because, let's face it, There aren't many historical records of regular people, especially women, triumphing over powerful men with political connections. Dorothy Good was the daughter of William Good and Sarah Good. Dorothy and her mother Sarah were accused of practicing witchcraft in Salem at the beginning of the Salem witch trials in 1692. Only 4 years old at the time, she was interrogated by the local magistrates, confessed to being a witch, and claimed she had seen her mother consorting with the devil. Mary Walcott and Ann Putnam Jr. claimed the child was deranged and repeatedly bit them as she were an animal. Dorothy, written as Dorcas on the warrant for her arrest, received a brief hearing in which the accusers repeatedly complained of bites on their arms. She was sent to jail, becoming at age of 5 the youngest person to be jailed during the Salem witch trials. 2 days later, she was visited by Salem's officials. She claimed she owned a snake given to her by her mother, then talked to her and sucked blood from her finger. The official took this to mean it was her familiar, which is defined as a witch's spiritual servant in animal form. Dorothy was in the custody from March 24, 1692, when she was arrested, until she was released on bond of $50 on December 10, 1692. She was never indicted or tried. Her examination by the magistrates were conducted on March 24, 25th and 26th, according to Reverend Dodat Lawson. Dorothy was youngest person ever accused of witchcraft, and she had younger sister, Mercy, who was born after Sarah Good's arrest and died shortly after birth, likely from malnutrition and the harsh conditions of imprisonment. Sometimes it's really hard to believe how humankind can be so sick and twisted. It's scary even to think how many people died horrific deaths during this sick and dark time. I would love to know what you guys think, so leave your comments. Thank you for stopping by, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.